Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Breeze, Breezeway Productions' The Breeze, where we continue our coverage of this year's Austin Film Festival, the 2021 edition, with an awesome documentary that hopefully our audiences will be able to check out called In a Different Key. We have one of the directors, John Donvan, here with us today. So how you doing, John? And tell us a little bit about your film.
I'm great, Alex, and thanks for having me. In a Different Key is the story of a journalist who has a son with who's on the autism spectrum, and she has questions for her son's future, how the world will treat people like him, and she kind of goes on a journey to find out what the record is on that. And she starts by going to the home of the very first child ever diagnosed with autism. First, she had to find him, and she did find him. And she discovered him living in a small town in Mississippi. This is all real, by the way. This is not fictional.
Right.
Autism is a pretty young diagnosis. It was only really crystallized in the 1940s. And it focused around, at that time, around this young child in Mississippi whose name was Donald Triplett. And he was mentioned in the medical literature as case one. He was not the first person to have autism, but when the diagnosis was recognized, he was kind of the signature case description. And the journalist I'm talking about is my co-director and my partner in reporting on journalism for more than 20 years for ABC News and PBS, Caren Zucker. Oh, wow. She's the mother. I was at ABC on camera, and Caren was a producer behind the scenes. And when her son was diagnosed in the late 90s, she wanted to really use the position she had as a journalist at the network to start to report on autism. And she asked me to be her partner in that. I have a brother-in-law with autism. And so we did that for a long time, 20 years. We wrote a book that came out in 2016, which was a history of the diagnosis that I'm happy to say did really well. It was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize and a New York Times bestseller. It's called In a Different Key, and that's the name of the movie also. But the difference between the book and the movie, both of them have the story of Donald Triplett and finding Donald Triplett. But the book was all history. The movie looks at Donald Triplett compared to the present day and the challenges of people on the spectrum today. And the beautiful story at the heart of In a Different Key is the fact that Donald Triplett, the first child ever diagnosed, had a fantastic life, and he's still going. He's 88 years old, but his community has accepted him in this little town from the beginning. And that's really unusual for people on the spectrum.
Wow. To be the first case on record, not the first one ever, but the first one on record. Was there a lot of controversy with regards to this, where no one has been diagnosed before on paper, for this to be the first one? Did everyone agree to it, or was it completely obvious? Like, how did all of that play out?
It was kind of a stealth thing at the beginning in the 1940s. It was published in an article written by a psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins named Leo Kanner. He was at the time a very prominent child psychiatrist, really the leading child psychiatrist in the world. And he wrote this paper, but not many people paid attention to it for many, many years. And it was only in the 1950s that the diagnosis began to be applied to other kids. So the recognition of autism was very slow to come. So it wasn't controversial. It's more that it was slow to be recognized. And I would say even through the 1990s, autism was still a relatively rarely handed out diagnosis.
Do you go down the early parts of his life, of Donald's life, and that you show like archival footage or imagery for what he was going through? Is it, conversation back and forth? How did you organize your doc?
So it wasn't a big with Donald himself, who is our friend, and he really likes us, and he has a habit of giving numbers to people. It's one of his traits. He gives people numbers if he likes you, and Caren got a number and I got a number, so that meant we really made a connection. And in his early 80s, he learned how to text, and he texts with Caren a lot, and he's very fluent on texting, but when you speak to him, he's not very, very chatty. So no, there wasn't a big conversation with him, and there were no home movies. Again, his childhood was in the 1930s.
Right.
But his mother was a big keeper of photo albums. So there's a whole bunch of photographs. And the other thing that we did do in the film was create the social milieu in which he was raised in two ways. One is he was a white child in the Jim Crow South, so that's relevant to why he had a relatively advantageous upbringing. And the other one was that in that period of time, people with his sets of behaviors were almost invariably institutionalized for life. And so the film goes into that background about he was born in a very dangerous time for a person with autism, because the pressure to put people like that away, as they say, to get them out of circulation and to almost be treated like an object of shame, I'm sorry to say, was
Yeah.
really, really powerful. His parents stood up to that. That's how he ended up not having that history, and it's how he ended up becoming, they went and tried to get help for him, and that's how they got to Baltimore and to Hopkins and to the Dr. Connor, who looked at Donald, spent a lot of time with him, years thinking about it, and said, this is something that hasn't really been described accurately or clearly before. And he used the term autistic to describe Donald.
Have you been able to show this film to audiences with people that are involved in the autistic world? So people that have children with autism, people that are currently living with autism, so that they were able to maybe learn from as they were watching this to see how it was back in the day?
It's interesting. Well, yeah, absolutely. We've been showing it to two sets of audiences. One is, as you say, people who are in the what is known as the autism community, and that's people on the spectrum, their family members, people who help them, care for them, teach them, treat them, and we've been going to those audiences. And interestingly, I wouldn't say that there's a lot that's to them that's new. Our book would have that because of all of the history. That there's less history and more present day in the movie, but there is that history. And I think the things that surprise people in the autism community are things that we report on, like the fact that there's a problem of racism in diagnosis of autism today. And has been for a long time, that it was much more difficult for a child of color who's autistic to get an accurate diagnosis than a white child. But the other audience we're going to are the ones that, excuse me, Caren and I call the civilians, are the people who don't think they have a connection to autism. But our argument is that everybody has a connection to people on the spectrum, because people on the spectrum are dealing with a society made up of everybody. And very often that everybody is not very respectful or welcoming. And our goal was to reach the civilians. And so we've been going the film festival route, like Austin and other places, playing the film to quote unquote civilians and getting a really, really positive reaction to it. And, you know, in one place we played, again, these were not autism audiences, these were film going audiences. In one place, Caren was recognized the next day on the street by somebody who'd been at the festival.
Nice.
And she stopped Caren and said, you know, I saw your movie. Excuse me, I have a really bad cold, and second time I've done that.
Okay.
I saw your movie, and I just want to tell you, it's changed my life. I never really got autism before, but I get it now, and I want to be part of the solution for people who have challenges just from society not accepting them. I want to be on the right side of that. And that was like the home run moment for us, that that we were really reaching the civilians that way.
It's why you do what you do. It's what gives you life after people have seen your film. You were telling me earlier that you've had quite a run already. You were in Sonoma, you were in Oxford, you went to Sedona. Obviously, you've been to a lot of places, and now you're going to be screening at Austin. So we're here to also showcase this interview to audiences so that they can check out the film, which will be in Austin. When and where are you playing?
We're playing at the Austin Film Festival on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I don't have the names of the theaters, but if you go online, you can find them easily. And we're going to be doing Q&A afterwards. And we believe we're going to have members of from the local autism community in Austin, not only in the audience, but potentially on the Q&A panel with us as well, which is something we would really like, because Caren and I very, very much like engaging with communities when we take the movie out there. But more than just sort of putting the movie out there like a message in a bottle, we like to be where the bottle is, and
we'll be able to put those times and locations below in the lower thirds while we're editing the video, and then we'll put in some stills as well to showcase some images from the movie. And in closing, is there anything you'd like to say to the Austin Film Festival for the official selection this year?
We were really sort of stunned when we were accepted, and really honored, and the fact that we're getting 2 screenings sort of blew us away. And I'm heading there, and really look forward to meeting the organizers and the audiences that come in. And thanks for including us.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, John. Ladies and gentlemen, please check out In a Different Key screening at the Austin Film Festival coming right up. And I want to thank you for watching The Breeze, and stay tuned for more coverage for the upcoming Austin Film Festival on Breezeway Productions, The Breeze. Thank you again, John.
Thank you, Alex.